Thanks for tuning in to the Women's Vibrancy Code, a podcast dedicated to helping women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feeling turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. I'm your host, Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, keynote speaker, and self-made entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my signature program, the Women's Vibrancy Code. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about your energy, hormones, libido, and embracing your feminine power. Oh, and you might want to have pen and paper to take some notes on some of these episodes. I have Megan Lyons with me today, and we're going to have a juicy conversation. Hello, everybody. We have a lot of different things that we can talk about. Megan is an expert in the world of blood sugar management, thyroid health, digestive health, adrenal well-being, cardiovascular health, brain fog. I was looking at all of the options going, ooh, I want to talk about all of them. And I think today we'll probably hone in predominantly on blood sugars and brain fog. I don't know about you, Megan, but a lot of the individuals that come into my space and listen to this podcast, they're wanting to do big things in the world. They're wanting to serve greatly. And sometimes the brain fog gets in the way, the exhaustion, the irritability, the mood instability, the lack of sleep. And all of those can tie back to, a lot of different topics, but I thought we could really hone in on brain fog and specifically blood sugar management.
I think that sounds wonderful and so needed. And I've been there in that situation. Like you said, my brain, my passion, my soul wants to do all these big things. And come on, body, let's catch up and let's support me in that. And it wasn't until I understood the basics of nutrition and all the things we'll talk about today that my body could actually catch up and do it. So it'll be a great topic.
Absolutely. Let me read Megan's bio, because for those of you that listen in, you know that for me, let's call a spade. There's a lot of quote unquote experts out in the world. And I imagine if you are a consumer looking for support in your nutrition, in your health, in your well-being, it's confusing to go out into the world and you go, oh my gosh, every time I turn around, somebody's telling me this is the next best craze and this is the next thing. And I'm the best expert. Particularly since the pandemic, everybody went online. And so I always go, okay, you get to go to the foundation of, do they have credentials? Do they have a track record? And you can know without a shadow of a doubt that anyone I bring in and I interview, the answer is yes and yes.
Yes, amazing.
Let me read her bio. So Megan Lyons is a sought-after health and wellness expert who is deeply passionate about inspiring others to feel their healthiest and happiest. Megan is a Harvard graduate, MBA, and former management consultant who left the business world to follow her passion for wellness by opening the Lyons Wellness in 2014. We have that kind of in common.
Yes.
Yeah. Since then, she's earned a master's degree in holistic nutrition, become double board certified in holistic nutrition and clinical nutrition. She's currently pursuing a doctorate of clinical nutrition and has amassed over 10,000 hours of one-to-one nutrition consulting with clients internationally. Megan is the author of Start Here, 7 Easy Diet-Free Steps to Achieve Your Ultimate Health and Happiness, a top 10 Amazon bestseller in nutrition. And she runs a top podcast, which I have been interviewed on. We'll have to make sure that in the podcast show notes, they link our episode as well. And it's called Wellness Your Way with Megan Lyons. And she has a community and health-minded individuals looking to continually up-level their health and wellness. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be chatting with you again. The first time was a joy, so I know this will be the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you would add to just like, where did your passion come from to go from getting your MBA and being in the business world and then moving over to nutrition? There's always a story there.
Yeah.
What sparked the shift?
I used to always say I didn't have a story. I was one of these weirdos in nutrition who didn't have a story. And I realized looking back, that was not entirely true. That was just my perception of it. I think my story actually started from the time I was born. I've been putting so much pressure on myself to be my best self. I'm extremely competitive with myself. I'm not that competitive with the outside world, but I will never, ever, ever rest for less than my best. And that sounds awesome. And it is awesome in many ways. But when it comes to your health, if you're not prioritizing being the best at taking care of yourself, and you're prioritizing all these other achievements and drive and all of this kind of stuff, our health begins to crumble. And that happened to me for sure. In around, I would say 2010 or so, I started experiencing what I now know to be severe adrenal issues. At the time, I had no idea what was happening. I felt tired, which is not part of me. I felt demotivated. I had hormonal issues. I lost my period. I went into a well-meaning conventional medicine doctor, and they said, "Oh my goodness, your hormones are lower than that of a postmenopausal woman." And here I am in my mid-20s. And she said, "There's nothing you can do. This just must be your genetics or something like that. So here's some medication." And even then, even though I had zero nutrition education, I knew that that wasn't the answer for me. I am not someone who's completely opposed to medication. Of course, I've taken medications. I will in the future too. But that was not the answer. I knew what I was doing to myself. I just didn't know how to unravel. So that was the start of my journey as I experienced that for myself and healing myself, which I think is a continuous journey. I will never claim to be all the way there. But as I felt better and started understanding how to heal my own body, then I just couldn't not share that. So that led into the business and where I am today.
So important. And yeah, my story is very similar. It was 2014
Wow.
where I was tired. My body hurt. I didn't want to be touched. I felt sad.
Yes.
And I had some strange rashes that were showing up, like kind of rough, patchy spots on the outside of my feet.
Yeah.
And luckily in my scenario, I live in Southern Oregon, where the individuals that founded the Institute of Functional Medicine are here.
Amazing.
And so right now, I'm sure you and I both hear the stories every day, every week from well-intentioned people that have gone to their mainstream providers and have been told everything looks fine, or here's your medication, welcome to aging. And they leave their doctor's office, quote unquote, in quotations, they leave their doctor's office going, gosh, that doesn't really work for me. Like this is not my normal. And where do I go? I've worked with people that have seen 35 different providers, and they've continued to advocate for themselves. So I'm so grateful for you being able to listen in and saying, no, I'm going to continue to advocate. And I'm assuming that you found someone in integrative nutrition, and then voila.
Yes.
So if we're going to talk, and we could talk about so many different things, but blood sugar management, let's start there. How would someone know, like, oh, my blood sugar must be off?
Yes.
Or, maybe I should focus on my blood sugars or my metabolic health a little bit more. What are some things that someone might be experiencing that are clues for them?
Yes. The problem or the challenge in figuring this all out for yourself is that symptoms of blood sugar dysregulation very closely mimic symptoms of lots of other things. And you can brush them under the rug, at least for a little while as they're developing. So what I mean by this is one symptom would be excessive cravings. If all of a sudden at 3 p.m. every day, I just can't survive without that candy bar. And then 2 hours later, I want more sugar and I keep craving sugar or caffeine or something like that. That's a sure sign of blood sugar dysregulation, or that's a possible sign of blood sugar dysregulation, but it could also be a sign of other things as well. Other signs of blood sugar dysregulation would definitely be excessive belly fat, especially around the abdomen when you're, quote, doing everything right. It would be that feeling of what people know if they have a blood sugar monitor is hypoglycemia in the middle of the night, but you might not know what it is. You might wake up and feel kind of panicky and anxious and sweaty, and you're not going through menopause at the moment and you don't know what's going on. That could be a sign of it. Kind of feeling like you are full in the moment from a meal, and then 20 minutes later, you're looking for food again. That could also be a sign of blood sugar dysregulation. So irritability, there are so many other potential symptoms. And then if it extends into more severe complications, then we can talk about symptoms of insulin resistance and non-alcoholic fatty liver and all of that kind of stuff. But underlying all of this is just kind of a feeling of being off. And I think that's tied to brain fog, which you said as well. Brain fog is so closely related to blood sugar, because when your brain doesn't have a stable fuel to run on all the time, when it's kind of riding that roller coaster along with your body, it's very hard to focus. So many symptoms right there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's often, can you speak to the busy individuals who are go, 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 do, do, do? Maybe they're skipping meals. Maybe they're just quickly going through Starbucks line and getting their Frappuccino and their muffin, or they're eating a bowl of cereal, or they're eating late at night because they haven't already. What are the trends that you see kind of making the metabolic imbalances tip over?
Yeah. I do think fasting is a very delicate double-edged sword here, because fasting can be a wonderful tool if it's done in the right way and done for people who are cycling at the right period of time and all of that kind of stuff, and done on the right individual. It can be a great tool. But unfortunately, I think people are hearing the term intermittent fasting these days and hearing, oh, that's healthy. And then they hear, well, you just can't eat food, so I'm going to have 12 cups of coffee, and some of them might have sugar and who knows what else in there. And I'm just not going to eat until 3. So I'm fasting. And then they put this label on it and they think it's healthy. And that could potentially be a train to somewhere we don't want to go, because when we're relying solely on fumes being caffeine, sugar, adrenaline, cortisol, all kinds of things like that, we are burning our body out really quickly. And you might feel fine as long as you have that dose of caffeine coming into your system, but your body is struggling inside, and eventually you'll be in burnout.
Yeah. It's such an important conversation for those of you that are doing intermittent fasting, particularly women. Okay. Yeah. During our luteal phase or our PMS time, it is not the time to push your body into what's called autophagy or in intermittent fasting.
Yes.
And it's not just how we choose to do a fast, but how do we break the fast? How do we prepare for the fast? What does our protein intake look like throughout the eating phase? And yes, to do it in collaboration, ideally with a provider. I often say, can every meal have fat, protein, and fiber?
Yes, we're the same in that. Okay. And I think people miss those, even if they tell me they're eating healthy food. So, and they are, because they're not eating, French fries and donuts for breakfast or something like that. I don't know who eats French fries for breakfast, but let's just roll with it. They're not eating donuts for breakfast. So they think it's healthy, but maybe it's energy bar in quotes with a whole bunch of sugar and refined carbs and who knows what else. And it really doesn't have protein, fat, and fiber. Or maybe it is a yogurt that says probiotics on the front, but it doesn't have very many probiotics, and it's full of a bunch of sugar and really doesn't have all that much protein. I do think you're spot on. That's what people miss, is the good quality fat, the good quality protein, and all of that fiber. Those are keys.
Yeah. Yeah. So for people that are listening and going, okay, wait a minute, I feel kind of overwhelmed. This is a lot of information. what are some specifics? Like, can you just go through a couple things that are great to eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner? Are you a fan of snacking? How do they start the journey of keeping blood sugars more steady?
Yeah, I do think starting with breakfast is most important because it's hardest, honestly, for people to get protein, fat, and fiber at breakfast. At least for most of my clients, they're used to, like you said, driving through Starbucks or not eating anything, and getting that protein, fat, and fiber at breakfast is important. So timing wise, I vary that based on the person. I personally wake up very early. I love my morning routine and all of that. And I don't really get hungry until later in the mid morning. But I know for me, based on my body and my hormones and all of that, I need to eat around 8:30 or something like that for me. That might vary based on the person. So some self-experimentation is needed. But in terms of what to eat, I'll give you a few examples of what I love for breakfast, and then people can customize it based on what they enjoy. Today I had spinach artichoke crustless quiche, which has some eggs, obviously spinach and artichoke. It has some zucchini. It has some really nice herbs and things like that. And for me, that is a great way to start my day with, just like we said, protein, fat, and fiber. Oftentimes I'll make a breakfast hash, which has some ground turkey, some sweet potatoes, some Brussels sprouts, other vegetables cooked in some ghee. And that's really wonderful. A smoothie can be great as long as you're including adequate protein, fat, and fiber, like you said, and mitigating the tons of sugar impact. I'm not anti-fruit or anti-carbs at all, but when people make a smoothie of just papaya and pineapple and mango and strawberries and nothing else in there, that's a blood sugar roller coaster waiting to happen. So those are just a few ways I start out. But as long as people are getting in those things you said, protein, fat, and fiber, it can really be customized many ways. Leftovers from dinner the last night, or whatever you feel like in the morning is great.
I love it. And the quiche, you can make that once and it could potentially be breakfast 2, maybe even 3 mornings. Warm it up.
I do that.
And with the smoothies, like for the base, you don't have to use fruit juice as the base. It can be water. It can be a nut milk that's not sweetened. And then I have clients that will go to, places like Jamba Juice or acai bowls, and they end up with these, they feel like really healthy smoothies, but it's predominantly all fruit. And so, yes, how do we throw an avocado in there, get some nuts and seeds, throw in some ground flax. What about for the individual? So you've already mentioned the brain fog, the mood irritability, the strong cravings, adding on extra weight around the abdomen, waking in the middle of the night, all of those things that can happen when our blood sugars are unstable, as well as fatty liver. I'm curious if you would talk a little bit more about the long-term detrimental effects. Not that I'm a big fan of be afraid, but at the same time, I really want people to hear the importance of prioritizing this now. And if you're someone who's hearing this, but you also feel like you don't really know where to start, just know that you can reach out to either of us. We've got you. There's a lot of easy tips and tools and ways that we can test to really see what your body needs. But what are some of the more long-term detrimental effects for someone who doesn't take this seriously?
Yeah.
And maintains unsteady blood sugars over a longer time period?
Yeah. Well, I also don't like to be doom and gloom, like you said, but I have to, or I get to continue reframing my fear in my head. My fear being that our country in particular, but our world is heading in a dangerous direction with blood sugar. I had just maybe last week, a client come to me with an A1C, which is, for listeners who are not yet familiar, it's kind of a measure of your 3-month average blood sugar. It's not exactly that, but we can say we can use that as a proxy. And his was in the pre-diabetic range. And his doctor had said to him, "Oh, don't worry about that. All Americans are pre-diabetic, so you don't have to do anything." And we'll
just put you on drugs when you get there.
I was so taken aback. I was like, okay, now we are lowering ourselves to this standard, which is crashing very quickly. We are metabolically in trouble. Many of the audience might have heard the statistic that's going around these days. 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And that's a scary trend. So you mentioned fatty liver. As we have this insulin resistance, insulin is a hormone that helps us manage blood sugar and helps us get sugar into the cells. And we can get kind of like the boy who cried wolf with that. So if we call on it over and over and over, then it ignores our call and we have to churn out more insulin. That insulin resistance turns into non-alcoholic fatty liver. And for the first time in history, non-alcoholic fatty liver driven by sugar and processed food has overcome alcoholic liver disease. So it is now more common to have a liver issue and eventually leading to cirrhosis and potential liver replacement or liver transplant from processed food than it is from alcohol. This is a really scary direction, but what I remind myself in order to change it to the positive is this is completely reversible. I have seen so many people, and I know you have too, reverse insulin resistance, reverse non-alcoholic fatty liver, for sure reverse prediabetes. We can do something about it. So it's so great to all the listeners who are chiming in and doing something for their health. We've got this if we all come together and do it.
Yep. And so once again, that looks like watching your not only sugar intake, but I often say, I'm curious what you think about this one, Megan. The clients that I work with, I'll say, can you just, for every time you sit down and eat, look at your plate and count at least 3 colors.
Right.
And white, yellow, brown don't count.
Yeah.
Unless the yellow is really bright, like a bright bell pepper or something.
Yeah.
But there's so much of the diet is potatoes and meats and rices and breads. And those are all in this white, yellow, brown category.
Yes.
But if we can simply start making efforts to bring in, we've already talked fat, fiber, protein, and then a diet rich in color. I'm curious if you think something that simple.
Do you think? Absolutely do. Yes, I fully embrace that. It is the simple stuff that is actually the most powerful. People say cliches are cliches for a reason, and I feel that way in the nutrition world. People come to me and they want something fancier than eat vegetables, look for 3 colors. They want the pill. They want the crazy strategy. Like my dad used to order cases of grapefruit juice and thought if he just drank grapefruit juice 12 times a day, everything in life would be healed, whatever. People want something that feels like that, but the real answers are whole food and an abundance of whole food, a variety of whole food. Just like you said, those phytonutrients in the different colors of food, they all have different superpowers. People might have heard of like the reds in tomatoes that has lycopene, that's great for prostate cancer, or the blue with anthocyanins or whatever. We don't have to memorize all this. We just get the oh yeah, look at those blueberries, some of my favorites, so good. We just get to fill our plates with a bunch of color, and that can be fun, that can be doable, that can be tasty, and it's so powerful.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And, you know, when I said at the beginning, we could talk about blood sugars, thyroid, adrenal well-being, cardiovascular well-being, brain fog, and I want everyone to hear it's all tied together. So I'm curious what you would say, Megan. In what ways, if someone has been diagnosed with a sluggish thyroid or Hashimoto's or Graves', or they're curious, what does that mean? Do I have adrenal fatigue? What is that? And what if my cholesterol is high? I don't know. And I think I am struggling with some brain fog. And what if my blood sugars are unsteady? How do all of these things tie together?
Yeah.
And what are some, like, just broad stroke shifts that anyone can start today as they're listening to this, that's going to potentially have the domino effect and help impact all of those factors? Yeah.
Amazing. So how are they all connected? The simplest way is to talk about hormones or the endocrine system, because many of those things, with the exception of cholesterol, which I'll get to, many of those things you mentioned were hormonally driven. So we think of hormones like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, which are hormones, But insulin, which I mentioned, helps in blood sugar regulation. That's a hormone. And thyroid, our thyroid gland produces hormones. And these are all playing together all the time. So I like to think of an orchestra. And if I was watching an orchestra live and the violinist just went rogue, the violinist like went crazy and started going double speed or something like that, what would the other members of the orchestra do? They would look over and be like, uh-oh, violinist went rogue. I'm going to try to speed up with him, or I'm going to try to play louder to cover him so the audience doesn't know that he's gone crazy, or I'm going to stop and let him take the solo or whatever. They would try to compensate for this. Our hormones do the same thing. So if the thyroid is the root cause, maybe, who knows, but in this example, let's say, and the thyroid goes rogue, then those other hormones are going to try to compensate in the symphony by altering their activity. So one thing like thyroid turns into then blood sugar dysregulation, which turns into maybe sex hormone dysregulation. It all goes together. And these symptoms build on each other because of the complexity of what your body's trying to do to cover up that initial issue. So then, okay, go ahead.
I love your example. That is such a great, it
Good, please use it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
I really like actually envisioning that violinist, and I used to be a violinist back in the day, so I was probably the one who was going rogue, but it makes a lot of sense to people, and our body really does work that way. And then cholesterol was the one that I left off, which isn't directly hormonally driven, but cholesterol, which we measure in the blood, I like to think of as not a bad thing. Cholesterol is a helper. It's like when if people were driving by and they noticed houses on fire and they always noticed there were firemen and firewomen there, they would say, well, those firemen and firewomen, they're terrible. They cause fires, but that's not the problem. The firemen are helping the fire. It's just they happen to always be there where the problem is. And cholesterol is like that in our body. It's a helper, but the abundance of it means there's a lot of problems to be fixed. There's a lot of fires in our analogy. And when there are a lot of problems based on inflammation or based on blood sugar dysregulation or based on all kinds of other things, just not treating our body really well, that's when cholesterol shows up. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how they're all related. The second part of your question was, what are some basic things to do about it? Should I move on to that, or you want to pause?
Sure. I love the cholesterol piece, feels important to me because I think cholesterol has gotten a bad rap.
Yeah.
And everyone is simply put on a statin.
Yes.
But we also need to remember that cholesterol is the basis of our hormones.
Yes. Yes.
It's needed in order for our body to convert it into hormones.
Yes.
And there was a Nobel Prize winner who showed it's not just high cholesterol or atherosclerosis. It's high cholesterol mixed with high inflammation or high stress.
Yes.
Where the challenge and our concern around cardiovascular wellness really shows up.
Yes.
And so if we go, and so that's probably going to tie into just your broad stroke. What are just the broad stroke lifestyle nutrition shifts that any person could start that's going to have an impact on their thyroid, their adrenals, their blood sugar management? I saved gut because I think we need to talk about gut health. It needs to have its own big question. So we'll go there next. But, when it comes to nutrition changes, lifestyle, any specific supplements that you go, you know what, this one or two supplements probably benefit anybody and everybody. I'm curious. I'm excited to hear your next answer.
Okay, I love it. So I do think of the overall health approach in multiple pillars, and I understand what you're saying is, where do people start? I don't think we have to be perfect in any of the pillars, but I do think we need to put a little effort towards each one. If I'm really simplifying the pillars, it will be food, movement, and then stress management, sleep, connection, all that wonderful stuff, all in that last pillar. And so we need to be just pushing the boundary, moving the needle a little bit in each one. And it depends on where the person's starting. So for food, I'm always going to promote more vegetables, more water, generally more protein. That one depends on the person, but I find the clients that I work with are almost always under on what I would suggest for them on protein, and then less added sugar, less processed food, less eating in a frenzy, all of that kind of stuff. So if the person's starting with a McDonald's only diet, great. I'm going to have them. I don't even think McDonald's has a salad anymore. So maybe I'll have them choose one meal a day from.
They don't? Wait,
I
McDonald's?
think, yeah,
They don't
I
even
think
have
one
a
of my
salad?
clients just told me they took it off, which is shocking. You could fact check me on that. I'm not
Oh.
precisely sure that's true, but that's what I heard. So
Wow. For those of
I
you that are
know.
just listening to the podcast, my jaw, like my chin just touched I'm proud to say I've never eaten a McDonald's hamburger in all my life. I'm like,
Oh my goodness.
but I
I
can't
am
believe
not
that.
proud to say I have eaten many. My family always used to stop at McDonald's
Oh,
driving to Colorado all the way until I was probably like 14 or 15. I probably ate a lot of
oh,
McDonald's. And
man.
since then, I haven't at all. But ooh, yeah.
Okay. So for the individual who's starting on the McDonald's diet and they can't get their salad anymore, I interrupted. Keep going.
Well, we're just going to make one small change. So maybe they can start making their breakfast at home. Maybe it's as simple as making a chia pudding with some blueberries, or even getting one of those pre-frozen smoothies, as long as it has good ingredients, and blending it themselves, something like that. We're going to start gradually, but the goal is, just like you said, getting those phytonutrients through colors and getting that protein, fat, and fiber in as many meals as possible. And I'm remembering now that you asked about snacking before. I think it really depends on the person. I believe that for most people, we are snacking too much. And I definitely fall into that category. I would love to snack 24 times a day and eat no meals, but that's not optimal for my blood sugar or my health in many ways. But I'm also not like a robot, absolutely no snacks. There are lots of people who are super active, and based on various situations, I might encourage some snacks. So it really depends. But if you're eating, eight or 10 snacks a day, that's probably not optimal. So food, we make gradual changes. Movement, I really believe that and know that the body is designed to move. And that doesn't mean we have to do a CrossFit class 7 days a week, or it doesn't mean we have to run a marathon. It doesn't mean anything, but it means that our body is not designed to sit in a chair for 16 hours a day without any movement.
I'm going to get up while you say that.
Yeah, I alternate sitting and standing, but even then I find, yes, thank you. That's good. Permission to stretch. Even then I find it's not enough. I try to take stretch breaks like you're doing. I have a little rebounder out there. I love exercising, but exercising and then sitting all day is still not optimal. So just working with the person on what do they love to incorporate? How can we incorporate a little bit of that?
Yep.
And then that last big old bucket before I answer your supplement questions is the huge one with sleep and connection and stress and all of that. And I find this is so individual based on the person, because we all have different stressors, and we all, if we really dig deep, we know at least something that we could be doing to improve this pillar of our life. But
Yep.
it's hard to do. I'll admit it. It's so worth it though to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're going to talk about supplements first. A couple follow-up questions. What are your thoughts on portion sizes? I find that, at least for the listeners in the US, when we eat out,
yeah.
the portion sizes are likely enough for 4 to 6 people. I mean, I'm curious if you have general recommendations for simple ways for someone to navigate portion sizes.
Yes, I'll give you some simple ways that I suggest. I'd love to hear your thoughts too. But I will first say that my portion size exercise in my client lineup is way at the end, because I honestly find that as people move towards eating more real food, they need the portion size guidance less. It is really easy to overeat on Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop, or on cotton candy, or on whatever other processed food. It's so easy. And portion size is important with that. But if you're eating salmon and broccoli and asparagus and butternut squash for dinner, it's just way harder to really overdo it in a way that's detrimental for your body.
I love that you're saying that. Totally.
Yes. Thank you for that. I find most people don't even need it if we switch to whole food. But when they do, I use a hand for all my portion sizes. So at least a palm, the thickness, width, area of your palm of protein, at least 2 fist sizes. So for those who are not watching, just ball up your fist like you're going to punch a pillow, and at least 2 of those full of fiber on your plate. But hey, if you want to go more, that's great. At least a thumb of healthy fat, so oil or something like that, a good healthy quality oil. And then if you're including grains or other starches in the meal, a cupped hand, like if you were going to try to cup some sand out of the ground, as many grains as could fit into the cupped hand. That's a great starting point for people.
Love it. Simple. And I'm assuming we're going to have time to, because we're still going to talk about supplements, and I wanted to ask about brain fog. There's so much to talk about, but then also in the gut health conversation, that as our gut gets to a more healthy, away from gut dysbiosis, let's say, and leptin and ghrelin balance, then our satiety, our ability to go, oh, there's that cue. My body has had enough. I'm no longer hungry. What I'm hearing from you is, as we eat healthier foods, that's then going to care for all of the aspects that we've talked about, as well as our gut health. And we are less likely to overeat.
Yes.
And then the other thing to add is, if you're eating out, for some people, I'll say it's okay to just portion it out at the get-go. Like, big thing comes, ask for a to-go container, get your version of what Megan had just mentioned regarding portion sizes, leave all the vegetables on, and then just take it, put it in your to-go container so you have leftovers for tomorrow. And it's because I think there's also this piece of how many of us grew up being told you have to finish your plate. And so to acknowledge that up front, we're not going to waste it. We get to set it aside, and it can be eaten tomorrow for lunch. Okay.
Yes.
And then with the body movement piece, I just watched the Netflix documentary on Blue Zones.
I still haven't seen it, but I've heard so much about it.
It's great. And so to talk about body movement from the perspective of gardening, they studied Okinawa, and they simply don't have recliner chairs. They spend more time squatting, more time going from the ground and to standing up. Or villages in Italy where they found the higher likelihood. So the blue zones are the zones where people are more likely to live beyond 100. So they're centurions. And they found that the villages that had higher, more steep inclines in the hills, so they spend time walking, if there's just simply a steeper grade that they're walking at, increases their likelihood of living a longer life.
Amazing.
So when you talk about body movement, it can be something as simple as gardening, the 7-minute workout, going on a walk, but choosing a place that has a hill, unless you live in Florida. Good luck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Dallas.
Or Dallas. Yeah. And I was just in Austin, and it was like, that's a hill.
Yeah, I know. It's very flat around here. I completely agree, though. I think I'm someone who loves exercise. I love an exercise class. I love sweating, actually. I love all that stuff, but many people don't, and that's okay. We just haven't found what you love yet. My husband loves gardening. He won't let me touch the roses because I do not have a green thumb, but that's a great form of exercise. Like you said, getting up and digging in the dirt and squatting and bending over. All this stuff is fantastic.
And for the people that work really long hours, something as simple, like I have my uplift desk. I can't lift it right now because my microphone is on the stand and it won't work. But to be able, or there's little bikes that you can put at your desk where
Yes.
your legs can be biking. Or my brother, I just saw him, he had lost 25 pounds. I'm like, what did you do? He just got a treadmill that he put at the base at his desk.
Yes.
So he just walks 3 miles a day while he's working. I mean, there are ways
Amazing.
that we can work. Okay. I'm gonna shut up. What were you gonna say about supplements?
So you asked what are the supplements that I would recommend for most people. If I really had my way, I would lab test everyone in the world and design precise supplements for everyone. But
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. So just to answer your question at a broad stroke, I think that most people these days do benefit from a probiotic. I would love to not need it. In many years ago, we were getting great quality soil. We were not over sanitized. We were eating a lot of fermented food. We didn't have all these drains on our gut health. But today, I do think most people benefit from a good quality probiotic. I feel similarly with vitamin D. It's great to be able to get that from the sunshine and do that in appropriate doses for your skin to protect it, but not too much. But I do think that most of us, myself included, spend too much time inside. And so I do supplement with vitamin D. I love magnesium. This is going to be the third of four.
Yep.
Magnesium is my personal favorite supplement. It makes me feel so much better when I'm on it. And I eat a lot of magnesium rich foods, which are like dark leafy greens, nuts and seeds, dark chocolate, my favorite, all of this. But my body just soaks up the magnesium and really loves it. So I think that can help people with all kinds of issues from digestion. I use it for anxiety and mental health and kind of nervous system relaxation. And I use the L-threonate format for that. But
Mm-hmm.
magnesium is amazing for so many things. And then the last one that I think most people these days could benefit from is a good quality fish oil or omega supplement,
Yep.
because most of our diet is shifted more towards those omega-6 inflammatory fatty acids. And we do just need a balance of those.
It's always fun for me to have these conversations because I am in agreement with almost all of that.
Great.
Absolutely. For even when I ran the women's health in Hawaii, you would think that everybody had ample vitamin D levels. You'd be blown away at how many, looking at serum 25 hydroxy vitamin D levels were low.
Yeah.
And yes, if I had it all my way, same thing. I want to look at your gut microbiome and look at stool testing and urine and saliva and blood so we can really craft it. But we don't necessarily have access to looking at everybody's quantifiables. So vitamin D, yes, yes. Magnesium, yes, yes. Sounds like you like the L-threonate. I often use Calm at night.
Okay.
Because it also helps bowel motility in the morning for me in particular.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and I know for some they lean more towards magnesium glycinate.
Yeah.
Looks
So
like the internet's, yeah.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
Calm, not only do I know Calm works for a lot of people. That format, is it carbonate? Is Calm magnesium carbonate? I believe maybe
It's citrate. Usually it's citrate.
Okay, it's citrate. So that's great for, like you said, bowel regularity. Citrate is fantastic for people who are constipated or who just feel like they need that extra little nudge digestively.
So what I heard you say is that magnesium citrate does not cross the blood-brain barrier as well as you would like, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
people like me, who my primary focus with magnesium is that nervous system benefit.
Yeah.
Also, the L-threonate format shows research for preventing cognitive, not that if you take magnesium L-threonate, you will never get a neurodegenerative condition, but best chance at reducing risk of that. So for brain stuff, I like the L-threonate. And I think of glycinate as kind of a combination between those two.
Yeah.
But really, I'd like to customize the format based on the person's need.
Totally, totally. And even with the probiotic, that's the one place I don't suggest that everybody takes a probiotic, just because depending on their gut microbiome makeup, they can sometimes be doing more harm than good. But
I understand
eating probiotic rich foods, I'm always a strong yes. And there's some that go even even eating your kimchi and your sauerkraut and drinking your kombuchas and yogurts and kefirs. Talked to some people that say they don't suggest that for anyone and everyone. So
I understand that. SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, for people listening, is definitely on the rise. And when you do have an overgrowth of bacteria, which are not supposed to be in your small intestine, those probiotic supplements for sure, and even probiotic foods, that can exacerbate the problem. So I understand not recommending it to everyone. I think for sure, listening, if you have tried those foods or tried a supplement and you feel worse, then ask your practitioner about SIBO and a protocol for that. And if you haven't tried that, and you would like to try increasing your probiotic rich foods as a maybe precursor to eventually trying a probiotic supplement, I do think that a lot of people would benefit. So I think we can meet halfway.
So good. So good. And then the other thing, just to add with the magnesium, Megan, and then we have 8 minutes left. Okay. We're going to talk about gut health is, particularly for women during their quote unquote PMS week or your luteal phase. So after you've ovulated, it can be strikingly beneficial to up the magnesium. There's a reason we crave chocolate during that time.
Yes.
And so are you in agreement there?
Absolutely. Yes. I have many people to bowel tolerance double it up during that time and feel so much better. And PMS, I'm not going to say never, ever have any symptoms of PMS, but it can be dramatically reduced from how people think it has to be. Yeah.
Just that buffer on the irritability. Okay.
Yeah.
Gut health.
Yes.
Can you speak to my guess is everything that we've talked about so far?
Yes.
Gut health plays a role. You and I both are big fans of actually doing stool testing in an ideal world. If you end up working with one of us, can you just speak to why is gut health important? What is leaky gut? And, for those of you that maybe have gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, upset tummy, it's not just that. Sometimes it's not necessarily that you're having symptoms of gut health.
Yes.
So, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm curious. I just can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Yes. Well, we're on the same page here. I remember probably 5 or 6 years ago when I would ask a group that I was speaking to, who's heard of the vagus nerve? And 0 people would ever raise their hand. And now these days, as I'm speaking in groups and I'm mentioning who's heard of the vagus nerve, I'm getting hands popping up more frequently. So this is an important topic of conversation that's being heard. And for people whose hands are not popping up, the vagus nerve is the largest cranial nerve in our body. It connects our brain and our gut. And it's so important because our gut health dictates our brain health and our brain health dictates our gut health. These two are talking all the time. So mood issues, brain fog, which we talked about before, cognition, memory, long-term brain health, that is all impacted by the health of our gut. And now we're starting to realize our gut health, which if it's not healthy, it can cause intestinal permeability or leaky gut, which you mentioned, that leads to inflammation. Inflammation's connected to like everything from arthritis to cancer, from diabetes to skin issues. Inflammation is everywhere. So I like to think of our gut health as the first layer of intervention. I don't think we can be fully healthy in any aspect until we improve our gut health.
Mm-hmm. Total agreement. For everyone listening, I just want to say up front, or not up front, before we finish our last 5 minutes, 50 minutes in, that if you are leaning into what Megan and I are talking about and you would like to reach out to Megan, make sure you look at the show notes. If you're watching the Facebook Live, in the description, I put in there all the ways to reach out to her. Ask your questions. This is important stuff. Okay. And it's not something to do on your own, in my opinion. It's like shooting a dart in the dark blindfolded. I think those of us that are ambitious individuals, we're accustomed to wearing all the hats and figuring it all out on our own and using Dr. Google, maybe these days, Dr. chat GPT.
Yeah.
What should I do? But it's okay to delegate and take that hot hat off and find someone that this is what we do. This is our specialty, to be able to give you the hand holding, because decision making can feel so convoluted. What's the best way? And so I just really encourage you, if you're leaning into Megan's energy or my energy and you're willing to raise your hand and say, I'd like some support. Okay. I make decisions all day long for my family and my business and my household and my community and my volunteer and my work and all the things that I do. And to be able to go, okay, here's one area where I can take the decision making off and just go to someone that I trust and say, tell me what to do. Please make the decisions. And it's in collaboration.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, Megan, but at least for me, it's a very personalized approach. I've heard you say a few times, there's no one size fits all.
Yeah.
We get to create a personalized option. So Megan, any last parting words, anything that feels unsaid, anything else that you want to say about how people can find you, reach out to you? And then we'll call it a wrap.
Well, I could just talk to you for 24 hours straight. So I think we're kindred spirits. And I echo so much of what you've said, especially that last part, that it's personalized. I often say to myself, oh goodness, it would be so much easier if you could just design a meal plan that worked for everyone and sell it for $1 online, and then 1 billion people buy it and you're set. But I just don't think it works that way. I would never sacrifice the health and the success of my clients. And I think that requires a customized approach. Like I know you deliver so well, and like I attempt to deliver to the best of my ability as well. So there is help out there. I think for anyone who's been told, like I have, and like many people who have been told the same, that there's no other answer aside from this medication, or aside from pain for the rest of your life, or aside from you fill in the blank, there always is another answer. So I hope this podcast gives people hope that there is a better answer out there for them. And I would love to connect with people. My website is a great place to find me. It's thelyonsshare.org, Lyons share.org. And Instagram, social media wise, is my most active. I'm also at the Lyons Share there, and just really looking forward to connecting with people and hearing what they thought about this episode.
Yeah. And her website is a wealth of knowledge. Your blogs, I was just looking briefly at the one. It was like the 4 key tests to make sure that your provider orders that they have. And I was like, yes.
Great.
So she really is a great resource. And for those of you that are here listening to the Women's Vibrancy Code podcast, I appreciate you. A 5-star and a review is always appreciated. I honor you for your time that we have just shared. I know that we all live very productive lives. And when we choose to spend time in the way that we just shared, I just want to acknowledge you and honor you for making it a priority, because we have a lot of different priorities that we can choose with how we spend our time. And so the fact that you've spent your time listening to this tells me that you are longing to feel spectacular. And you absolutely get to feel spectacular, even if it's at a point where it feels like, I don't know what my answers are. I've tried everything, just like what Megan said. There's always another possibility. I have worked with individuals that have literally looked for 10 years, gone and seen 35 different specialists, and they continue to advocate for themselves. And you are a unique puzzle. And just like Megan mentioned, it's your nutrition, it's your movement, it's also your lifestyle, your stress reduction, your sleep. I believe our relationship with our sexuality, past trauma, it's all relevant. And sometimes it's just finding that unique puzzle piece that has been missing. So I appreciate you, Megan, for the work that you do in the world and the impact that you have. And for everyone that's here listening, I appreciate you.